All right, I'm back. I'm back doing my second live stream for today before I head out of the office to go work from home some more. And I wanted to cover uninsured motorist and underinsured motorist and make clarification on the difference. So in California, you can purchase uninsured motorist coverage, which gives you protection against someone negligently driving their automobile and hurting you. So if you're driving your car and someone causes an incident and you have a collision and you're injured, your uninsured motorist coverage will pay you, and it will step in and pay you if the other party's insurance, if there is no insurance on the other side. So that's uninsured motorist bodily injury coverage. If the other party who causes the incident doesn't have insurance, you will have insurance that you can submit a claim to and say, hey, the other side didn't have insurance. Here's the documentation that they didn't have it. And I want you, and that's my insurance company, I want my insurance company to pay the damages that I sustained, including evaluating my pain and suffering and making a provision for my pain and suffering. And that's why a lot of lawyers expect generous offers from uninsured motorist bodily injury policies, because the pain and suffering should be evaluated in good faith. And the medical bills should be adjusted in good faith. So expect to be treated well by your own insurance company. And if you're not, then your insurance company is going to make you arbitrate that claim and against them. They're going to make you arbitrate the claim with an arbitrator that will decide what the fair amount of your case is worth. And I believe it was last year. It could have been this year. I'm trying to remember. Was it an opinion last year? Well, in the last, I think, 6 or 8 months, there's been an opinion that states that if you make an offer to your insurance company for the full policy and they don't pay it, and you have the arbitrator say it's worth the full policy, that the insurance company has to pay your costs for bringing that case before arbitration. And that's not always been the case. When there's a dispute between you and your insurance company over an uninsured motorist policy, like how much should be paid, what's the value of your claim, because you still have to prove to your own insurance company that your claim is worth X amount of dollars. If the other party doesn't have insurance, it doesn't just mean that your uninsured motorist bodily injury policy pays you the amount or the face value of a policy. It's an amount that's provisioned that you can then claim against and say, I'm entitled to this much in damages and the policy should pay this much. And it might be the full policy. You might think that your case is worth more than the policy, but you're asking for the policy in exchange for extinguishing your right to the benefit. So your uninsured motorist claim is made against your own insurance policy because the other party doesn't have insurance. And in California, an uninsured motorist policy is also an underinsured motorist policy. And I put a link in the description below to a page on the california.gov website that lays out all of your rights that you have against your own insured policy, your own insurance policy. And yeah. I don't think I have anybody watching. It doesn't say that there's any concurrent viewers. So if you have an underinsured motorist policy, you can claim on it if the other party doesn't have as much insurance as you've purchased to protect yourself. So if the person who hurts you negligently has only $15,000 of insurance, you might have a $30,000 uninsured motorist policy that will also be underinsured motorist. So you'd be able to go to your own insurance policy and say, hey, I've collected $15,000 from the other party's insurance policy, and that's not enough. I want to collect from my $30,000 insurance policy. You cannot collect a full additional $30,000 if your policy is a $30,000 uninsured motorist policy. You've already collected $15,000. You're allowed to apply to your own insurance company and ask for the remainder, an additional $15,000 to make $30,000. I like to explain it as a glass is half full when you obtain the settlement funds from the other party, and then your policy allows you to fill your glass the rest of the way up until that policy is extinguished. So the amount that you receive from the other party is the amount that goes into the glass, and then your uninsured motorist policy will fill your glass up to the amount potentially that you're entitled to. It will fill your glass up to potentially to the full amount, but you still have to prove on the policy. So just because you have an insurance policy doesn't mean that insurance policy pays. So filling up that glass requires another claim with your own insurance company that proves you're entitled to claim on the policy, which will be a police report, probably a claims letter from the other party's insurance company stating that the claim's been settled for the maximum policy of their insured, a declaration of no other insurance from the person who hit you. And then once it's established to your own insurance company and all those documents have been submitted and it's been established by your insurance company that you have a right to claim on the policy, then your own insurance company will then adjust your bills and determine how much more your claim is worth. And it might not be filling your glass all the way to the top. It might be, well, we'll give you a little splash. And that's what happens with a lot of insurance companies. They receive an uninsured motorist bodily injury claim after the claimant has collected a state minimum policy, and then they just throw a splash in. And they say, if you don't like it, you can arbitrate, which requires the claimant to go through all the same processes that someone would have to go through to claim on the policy if they were injured by someone driving a car with that policy. So the insurance company is oftentimes treating their insured on an uninsured motorist policy exactly the same as they treat someone who's claiming on that policy. So if you're injured in California in an automobile collision, you should consider hiring an attorney because you need to know if the other party has insurance, and if they do, what that policy is. What's the liability limit of the other party's insurance policy? If it's a state minimum policy, it's only $15,000 per individual injured in the incident, with a maximum of $30,000 to be paid out for injuries for all individuals injured in that incident. So if there's 3 injury victims that are claiming on the policy, it can't pay $15,000 to all 3 of them. It can only pay $10,000 to each of them, hypothetically. It can be divvied up in any way, but no individual can get more than $15,000. It can be divvied up any way, but no individual can get more than $15,000, and the group as a whole cannot get more than $30,000. So if you're one of the claimants in that scenario and you have uninsured motorist, you would get proof that the person who caused the incident paid out their entire insurance policy, and it may include to other claimants. And then you would say, hey, I only received hypothetically $8,500, and I have a $100,000 uninsured motorist policy. I want the remainder. I want $91,500 from that policy. And your policy as an uninsured motorist policy would also be an underinsured motorist policy. And there's adjusters at your insurance company who would review your claim, and they would make a decision on whether or not your claim met the requirements for paying out the policy. And if you disagree with that decision, you can hire an attorney and you can go to arbitration. But you're probably going to want an attorney to prove to the insurance company that you settled with the third-party insurance company for the policy limits, and that you're entitled to claim on your own policy, and that you want money from the policy, and this is why you want a certain amount, usually the whole policy. But you might have a claim that's not worth the whole policy. You might have a $100,000 uninsured motorist bodily injury claim coverage, and you might only have a small incident, and the other party has no insurance, and you only claim a few $1,000s, and that's all that you obtain. You know, just because you have an insurance coverage doesn't mean that the insurance company is going to pay that full amount, even if it's your own insurance company, especially if it's your own insurance company. Sometimes they're going to scrutinize you like they scrutinize anyone else. Now, it depends on your claims history, and it depends on the adjuster that you have, and maybe the time of year, and individual situations. But by and on the large, insurance companies are not looking to pay out generous sums of money. they're looking to adjust claims and make the insurance company's numbers look good so that the insurance company makes money. And that's what it is, a for-profit business. So you can purchase uninsured motorist coverage in California to protect yourself against drivers who negligently injure you without insurance. Now, you have a risk that you'll be hit by someone and it will be a catastrophic injury that you sustain, and your uninsured motorist coverage isn't going to pay nearly enough, but it will be something more than the very low insurance that you may only be able to obtain against a state minimum insurance policy. For example, if you're catastrophically injured, I've had clients who have permanent brain damage. I've had clients who've lost their intestines and have had major surgery, and the person who hit them only has a state minimum insurance policy. And under that situation, there's nothing good about it. There's not enough money to pay for the damages, pay for the pain and suffering, the medical bills, the lost future earning capacity. All of the things that you claim when you're injured in an incident have to be paid by someone, and if there's no one to pay, then there's no recovery. So it's important that you have an uninsured motorist bodily injury policy in the event you're injured by a driver who doesn't have insurance. And in California, an uninsured motorist policy is also an underinsured motorist policy. So you can buy additional insurance that's going to protect you in the event you're injured by a state minimum insurance policyholder. My name is Alexander Napolin. I'm a personal injury lawyer here in Southern California, and I represent individuals and families who have been injured through negligence and generally against insurance companies and their lawyers through the claims process and into litigation. And what I've learned is that insurance companies are not there to be generous. They're there to adjust claims and make the numbers work out for them. And that's why if you have an uninsured motorist bodily injury policy and you are going to be claiming on it, you need to consult with an attorney on how to present that claim and how to deal with your own insurance company in getting a payout, because your claim involves pain and suffering, and that's an arguable amount. That is a huge difference of opinion between you and the insurance company on how much you've suffered. Trust me, it's not something that is just, oh, you want $50,000, here you go. You missed your Disneyland trip. I mean, I think that's priceless, but the insurance company isn't going to value it at $1 million. So the insurance adjuster needs to have it presented in a way that's going to make them pay. And it's not going to be through, kind, fluffy words like, I missed my trip or something happened. The facts have to be laid out to the insurance adjuster. This is what happened. This is why it happened. Your insured's negligence. This is egregious behavior and it caused these injuries. And if you don't pay the claim, then we're going to have to go another approach to the jury. And it's going to cost money. And it's going to cost my own client money. And that's something that is considered, of course. So how much is paid to my client depends somewhat on how much insurance is available, how much money can be spent to pursue that litigation. And that's why it's an important ruling that uninsured motorist policies that don't pay the full amount and later have to, through an award through arbitration, have to pay the claimant's costs to get that award. But that can go the other way. The way that that works is if you don't have a win for yourself at arbitration, even if you obtain something, if you don't make it to where you said you should have made it, then you have to pay the other side's costs. Now, I don't know if that extends to arbitrations because I'm only aware of one ruling that basically extended costs to a claimant who obtained the policy on an arbitration on an uninsured motorist claim. But I do know that costs are a serious consideration when prosecuting any legal matter. So some clients have it on principle that they were injured and they want to take it to the fullest extent of the law. Now, that's not always in the best interest of my client, because there's risks in doing that. When you spend money, it's gone potentially forever. It's not necessarily going to be recovered. There's risks in litigation, and you don't know what's going to happen. There might be something that you miss because you're stuck in court. And I have clients who say, I don't want to be in court. I don't want to have to do a deposition. It's too much. And of course, that's usually when they're not as injured and they're doing well and they want to get the case closed. So these are discussions that you have with your attorney, and you don't just make these decisions without some thought. But it's good to have a lawyer when you've been injured, because you need someone to discuss these issues with, and you need to make decisions with more wisdom than just what you know. So I've seen thousands of incidents. I've dealt with thousands of uninsured motorist bodily injury policies, and the situations that you're going to encounter I've seen before. And if you hire my law office on a contingency fee, you get that wisdom with nothing out of pocket. And it's my no fee promise that if you don't recover, you don't have to pay me back. I've extended costs on the case, and if there's no recovery, then those are not charged over to you. And that helps my clients emotionally handle the process, because they have to know that someone's on their side 100%, not just to make money. So there is principle involved, helping my client to the fullest extent that I can with the resources that I have. So we don't go spending all of the money on litigation. We have to be wise, and that's why it's good to have a lawyer early, so that the planning can take place early on when the evidence is fresh, because going back and finding things later can be quite expensive if it ever exists, if it even exists still. So, uninsured motorist bodily injury policy is also underinsured motorist bodily injury in California, which means if you buy more insurance than the other party has, the party will pay you their full insurance policy, and then you can obtain more from yours, because it's not just about whether or not the other side has insurance or not. It's how much insurance do they have versus your underinsured motorist policy or your uninsured motorist policy. So again, it's not just about what the other party has. It's also about what insurance you've purchased that might be in excess of their policy. Especially if you're seriously injured, you might obtain the policy of the other party very quickly, and then you have protection. But you're going to want to consult a lawyer to make sure that you can prove to your own insurance company that the other party's insurance was extinguished. There are certain documents that you need, and you need to have somebody to look at it and say, this is enough, and then move to the next claim and say, here, I'm now claiming on my uninsured motorist bodily injury policy, and I would like additional money because the person who hit me only had a state minimum policy, and I have a larger policy, and I want the rest of the money from my policy to step in for the fact that I was not fully compensated. And the amount that your case is worth is up to debate with your own insurance company. So you also need a lawyer to help prove the value of your case by convincing the insurance adjuster that they should pay on your claim in an amount that you find acceptable, because the insurance adjuster is going to have a difference of opinion than you. Because the insurance adjuster is going to have a difference of opinion. They're not going to agree with you. That's almost certain. You might come to the insurance adjuster and believe that they're going to listen to what you have to say and then make a fair determination and then pay you an amount of money, and that's going to be enough. You need to understand that that isn't what occurs, even with your own insurance company, because they have numbers too. And the numbers are the facts, and the facts are what's followed. So you have to present the adjuster with facts that's going to increase that exposure. That's why you need a personal injury lawyer to investigate your claim and make a presentation to the insurance company that's going to convince them to pay you money. That's what you need. You don't need a lawyer to sit there and make outlandish claims about what they can do. You don't need a lawyer who's going to make outlandish claims about what they can do. You need an attorney who's going to tell you the truth. And that's what I do here at Napolin Accident Injury Lawyer. That doesn't mean I'm not positive for my client's case. It just means that my clients understand the strengths and weaknesses of their case before they make major decisions. And I don't always agree with what my clients decide to do. And it depends on the decision they're making as to whether or not I'm going to advise that they ever do that. So it's a process. And if you've been injured in an automobile collision and you believe you have an uninsured motorist situation, you need to contact an attorney as soon as possible, because there's evidence out there that's going to help you prove that the other party is uninsured. And if you don't have it, you might not be able to prove to your own insurance company that you're entitled to claim on your policy. You won't even get to the second step of proving how much your case is worth and having the adjuster provide you with a payment. That's the goal of hiring a lawyer for a negligence action against someone who's injured you on the roadways for payment of money. It's not to prosecute them for a crime or put them in jail or have them go to prison. That's the prosecutor's job. That's the district attorney's job. That's the government's job. The detectives will investigate the scene, determine if there's any evidence to establish a crime. And if not, then the police report is a traffic collision report, and that's it. Maybe there's a citation issued at the scene or in the report, and that's it. But if there's something that has criminal intent behind it, for example, maybe there's statutory drunk driving. Someone's driving drunk and they injure someone and they blow over, 0.02. And or 0.08. Sorry, I think it's 0.08. I don't drink, so I don't know what the limits are really, but I do think that it's 0.08. And if you blow over that, you're going to be subject to being criminally prosecuted for drunk driving, and if you've killed someone, manslaughter and murder potentially. So if you've been involved in an automobile collision, you need to seek the advice of a personal injury lawyer. Oh, I don't have anybody on. No one's listening to me. Maybe someone will watch it later. All right. Well, uninsured motorist is also underinsured motorist. Yes. So uninsured motorist is also underinsured motorist in California. And that means if you're injured by someone with a state minimum insurance policy, that means only $15,000 of insurance, and you're seriously injured, you have uninsured motorist coverage if you purchased it. You can have uninsured motorist coverage if you purchased it, but if you haven't purchased it at the time of the incident, you can't later purchase it and then claim on that policy. You need to have purchased the uninsured motorist bodily injury coverage before the incident, not at any point during or after the incident. So it's important to know your rights, that you have the ability to purchase uninsured motorist bodily injury coverage, and that is also underinsured coverage. So if the other party seriously injures you, you have the ability to go to your own policy in the event that they don't have as much insurance as you've purchased. So they might have a state minimum policy of $15,000. They might have a $30,000 policy. The person who hurt you might have a $50,000 policy. But if you have more than that, then your underinsured motorist coverage will pay an additional amount above the amount that you collect from the person who caused the incident. But it will not pay that money just automatically. You have to prove that the other party's money was paid to you, that it was the maximum amount of money that you could have collected. It was all the insurance that they have, and that your damages exceed that amount, and that your insurance company should step in and make a payment because the other party didn't have enough to fully compensate you for the situation. The problem is you're dealing with pain and suffering damages and speculative future earnings claims potentially, and the insurance company likes to just bat those all down and say, well, we're not going to pay very much because you can't prove this and you can't prove that and you didn't get that hurt. So you need a lawyer to help resolve that dispute with your own insurance company, to establish the claim and resolve the dispute. So that's another 24 minutes of live streaming. I like live streaming because I can get out my thoughts and hopefully someone listens and learns something about automobile collisions and what to do after an automobile accident. We haven't had as many automobile collisions recently because I think there's just been less traffic on the roadways since the whole pandemic kind of changed the way that we do business here. And that means less automobile collisions. But there's been a lot of traffic on the roads in the morning because school's back in and there's accidents happening. So be careful out there. Take extra precaution to save our children from these types of incidents. And if you're injured in an automobile collision, you can always call my office and request a free consultation. And if you have a child who's injured through the negligence of someone and you want it investigated, you need to reach out to a lawyer first and determine what kind of resources you can procure in terms of investigation and legal help. And that's why my office offers a free consultation. So if your child's been injured in an Uber or Lyft incident and the evidence is within the possession of Uber or Lyft, you're going to want a lawyer to help you investigate what happened so that you can obtain uninsured motorist coverage through that policy, as well as going after the person who caused the incident. My name's Alexander Napolin. I'm a personal injury lawyer here in Southern California. I offer free and confidential case evaluations if you've been injured in an automobile collision. The number one thing that you need to do if you've been injured in an automobile collision is get treatment for your injuries. Why? Because people who are hurt get treatment, and people who aren't hurt don't get treatment. So if you're hurt, you need to go get treatment. If it's an emergency, you need to go to the emergency room. If you can't get in with your primary care physician, then you need to go to the urgent care. If you don't have health insurance, then you need to find a lawyer who can help you get treated without health insurance. The number one thing that you need to do if you've been injured in an automobile collision is get treatment for your injuries and call my law office because you need further guidance. You need to know where you're going to go for treatment. You need to know how you're going to prove that the person who hit you injured your back. You might have a pre-existing condition. You might not have a condition that you think is very serious. And then later it ends up getting more serious and you didn't go to the doctor. And that's why the number one thing that you need to do if you've been injured in an automobile collision is get treatment, because the insurance adjuster will not believe that your back or neck are hurt if you delay treatment on those body parts. Those are hidden injuries. It's not a broken arm or a bruise or a hematoma or something that is outwardly visible. A back, a neck injury, those are underneath the skin, and they require diagnostic testing and documentation of subjective complaints to ultimately prove. And if those tests don't happen and those complaints aren't documented shortly after the incident, then it's nearly impossible to prove that those things arose from the incident. Now, it depends on the size of the incident. It depends on other circumstances, and that's why you need to talk to a personal injury lawyer if you've been injured in an automobile collision and you're unsure about what to do. Because some people, they don't have insurance, so they don't go to the doctor, and it's an automobile collision. They don't get in the ambulance because even though they're very injured, they don't have insurance. So the insurance company thinks that they just walked away and didn't get hurt, but that's not the case. That's a situation where a lawyer can really help, because a lawyer is going to help that person get treatment without health insurance. And not only is that going to make them better, but it's also going to help establish that they were injured in the automobile collision and that they're entitled to those bills being paid by the person who caused it and also pain and suffering. And that helps pay for their attorney, and the attorney gives them peace of mind. And it's not just about obtaining money, but it's helping them through the process of recovery, which means assessing the situation, coming to solutions, plans of action that will ultimately resolve a claim in favor of my client. But today I was discussing a situation with my client, and the injury, it was a back injury, just like we're discussing now. And he had MRIs, and the MRIs have positive findings. And he's had some issues in the past, but nothing like this. and the damage to the car is not very significant. So the insurance adjuster is telling my client, well, we don't think that you got injured in that incident, and we're not going to pay you very much money. And if you don't like it, you file a lawsuit. And that happens quite a bit, especially smaller automobile accidents. I mean, there are certain cases that I have that where my client got in an ambulance and it turns out that there's no damage to the automobile at all. I mean, you look at the car and it's fixed. And it's hard to tell a client, hey, the insurance company views your incident as not possible. And I'm not saying you're an insurance fraud, but you definitely have an eggshell situation where an eggshell plaintiff is a client who is particularly fragile. Maybe they have a particularly fragile emotional state, and an automobile accident triggers a trauma, and that trauma lasts for the rest of their lives, and they have PTSD, but they were susceptible to having those conditions. The defendant doesn't just get off from liability because that person is particularly fragile mentally. Same thing goes for the body. Even if you have pre-existing conditions, if someone hits you and makes those conditions worse, they're on the hook for the medical bills and the suffering that comes along. But that's also difficult for the plaintiff. It's hard for the plaintiff to prove that those injuries were made worse because there's diagnostic tests prior to the incident, there's treatment prior to the incident, the subjective complaints maybe weren't documented super well by the primary care physician and the surgeons because they really had no stake in any lawsuit or liability related to the incident, so they just cut corners. And then you're injured, the client's injured in an automobile collision, and these issues flare up and they're back to the doctor, but it's just a flare up like they've had before. So it's hard to prove that that flare up of a pre-existing condition is related to the incident. But going to the doctor as soon after the incident as possible certainly removes doubts from the adjuster's minds. And that's why I say the number one thing that you need to do if you've been injured in an automobile collision is seek treatment for your injuries. Because the sooner your complaints are documented by a medical professional, the closer in time that those injuries are related to someone after the incident, the stronger relevance they have to the incident. And when the case is presented to the adjuster is going to see that there is not going to be a way for them to argue that somehow there's a causation problem with your injuries, which is what's happening on some of my cases. I mean, if there's no damage to the car or the damage is very small and the person is claiming catastrophic injuries, the insurance company is looking at the situation and saying, well, you're going to need to prove that case in a court of law. And I do go through those motions and we do file those lawsuits and I do get the insurance company to change their mind. But some cases it's not possible. If the case has literally no damage to the car and the dealership took the car back without charging the client or their insurance company for any damages because the damage was too small, that's a type of situation where you have to say, okay, maybe it's not best to prosecute this claim. And for whatever reason, the client wants to continue to prosecute it. It's kind of a situation where sometimes the lawyers have to say, hey, I can't do that. Because lawyers have to watch out for their reputation in terms of coming to juries. You know, lawyers can get, definitely the defense, the insurance industry has made it very difficult for lawyers to go to a jury without the jury thinking that the lawyer's trying to pull one over to get some big lottery ticket for their client. And plaintiffs' lawyers are always asking for too much. That's not true at all. Plaintiffs' lawyers are asking for full compensation for their clients against those who have violated safety rules, who've acted negligently and carelessly and put the community in danger. So the amount of money that's awarded is a communication about how serious those injuries are and the safety violation that caused them. So coming to the jury with a very small incident is not going to bring that jury to feel that they need to enforce a big rule and stop something from happening ever again. And that's a situation that my client has to face if the property damage is minor, is that the jury is not necessarily going to be as inclined to award large amounts of pain and suffering. And maybe the more medical treatment you receive, the harder it is for your case to be proven as true. So, I'm the best automobile accident lawyer in Southern California. And I'm the best automobile accident lawyer because I'm compassionate. I care about my clients and their best interests. It's not just about how much money my client receives. It's about the communication that they receive during their case. And I'll admit, I'm not perfect at communication. No one is perfect at communication, but a lawyer who cares to return a client's phone call and cares when something slipped through the cracks and makes it right is an important attribute of any lawyer that you're choosing to work with. And that's why I'm the best automobile accident lawyer in Southern California. There are a lot of lawyers who won't even look at certain cases because they're just not big enough. And there are some attorneys who don't look at any case closely, and they just take as many as they can get their hands on. And I like to be of help to my community in a broader sense than that. And that's why I do workers' compensation and uninsured motorist bodily injury arbitrations. And I also do litigation when's necessary to protect my client from the insurance company trying to just lowball settlement the case. But unfortunately, lawsuits take a long time, and it hurts my client because my client's a person who only lives once, and the insurance company is a corporation, and the insurance company lives forever. It's like rotating adjusters. There's a new adjuster on the claim every month if necessary. So the plaintiffs are not in a good position to wear out the defendants and the insurance companies. And that's why it's also extremely important to get a lawyer early on, because you need to give your shot. You need to give your case a shot at settling for a fair amount without litigation, because litigation is long and expensive and nerve-wracking and risky. And having a settlement in hand that fairly compensates you in light of those risks and those time delays is a treasure for my clients. And I do it as much as I possibly can. Get the insurance company to pay a fair settlement without litigation, but sometimes it's just not possible to avoid a lawsuit. Usually it's because the insurance company is not acting fairly, in my opinion. But sometimes it's because the case just needs more discovery before the insurance company could pay such a large amount of money. So cases that are smaller, the insurance company doesn't scrutinize them as strongly as they might scrutinize a case that's asking for millions of dollars. So a larger case is going to usually last longer than a smaller case, although that's not necessarily the case. And there's delays that happen all the time on smaller files. And it's because they're a smaller file that the delay happens. Like if there's 3 cars involved in a collision and there's one party who's at fault for damaging the 2 other cars, and one of the cars never goes and gets their property damage inspected, or is just not complying and is just moving on with their life, driving with their car damaged, or their relative fixed their car, they're not giving the insurance company any information regarding the damages to their automobile. And the other party is waiting for payment from the same insurance company, but the insurance company won't pay any money out because they have a policy limits issue, and they need to know how much the other party is going to be demanding. They need to get a settlement from them, or else they'll overexpose the policy. So it might be that you have a small case that takes a long time because the insurance company is not able to make a decision until people who are completely out of your control do certain things. And there are legal processes to push it beyond that point, but those processes, at least at this point, take years. So you have to sit and wait for the train, so to speak. You can't spend all your money trying to chase a defendant years through the litigation process only to end up with the same amount of money. So you wait, because it's not worth it to spend the money to litigate the claim. But if you have an uninsured motorist bodily injury policy, you don't have to file a lawsuit in civil court. You avoid a $500 filing fee, service of process, and ultimately you're supposed to be treated better than what you would be treated like trying to obtain a policy from someone else. But that's not always the case, and people get lawyers for uninsured motorist policies all the time, especially if there's a third party, which means the other person who hit my client, we collect the money from that policy, and then we claim on our client's uninsured motorist policy. Okay. So the number one thing that you need to do if you've been injured in an automobile collision is get treated for your injuries. See, that's an issue. It's like a spike, a static spike. Well, I've been talking for a while now, and I think that kind of covers uninsured motorists, is also underinsured motorist in California. So if you buy an uninsured motorist policy and you're hit by someone with a minimum insurance policy of $15,000, if you've purchased an uninsured motorist policy that's more than $15,000, then you can collect the difference between what you purchased and $15,000. So if you purchased a $30,000 policy, you have the potential to recover an additional $15,000 above the $15,000 that you collected from the person who caused the incident, if the person who caused the incident only has a $15,000 policy and you prove that to your insurance company. But that still doesn't make you entitled to the $15,000 from your insurance company. You still have to prove to your insurance company that your case is worth that much money. And the lawyer that you used to prove against the person who caused your injuries is the same lawyer that you're going to use to claim on your uninsured motorist policy and say, give me that money. And the lawyer helps significantly with the administration aspect of it, but also the presentation aspect of it gives you a higher likelihood of obtaining the policy settlement that you want and avoid arbitration against your own insurance company. So get help from a lawyer, have the attorney's office take care of the administration, have your mind at ease that you have a professional on your side, because the insurance company has professionals on their side. They have thousands of them. I don't think they're very moral or ethical. I guess I couldn't say they're not ethical. I'm sure they have certain ethical guidelines that they follow. And I'm not accusing anybody of breaching any ethics, although there certainly have been many adjusters who I think have some ethics issues. But I think by and on the large, I'm not saying there's ethical violations, but from a moral standpoint, if you've been injured and you need money to help you, you need to make sure that you have a recovery because you have people depending on you. You need to take care of yourself. That's when you need to consult with a personal injury lawyer after an automobile collision. So my name's Alexander Napolin. I'm a personal injury lawyer here in Southern California. I represent injury victims who've been involved in automobile collisions. Well, I represent those who have been injured in automobile collisions. Let's put it that way. Okay. Well, there's one viewer here. I don't know if that's me, but if you're here, you can ask me a question and I'll answer your question. Okay. Uninsured. All right, taking questions. Anybody has a question about uninsured motorist policy? I'd be happy to help. Excuse me. There's some lawyers, they'll put clips and they'll talk about situations. So maybe I'll put up a YouTube of a situation and talk about it. But you might want to know, what does an uninsured motorist coverage do for you? What other insurance coverages should you have? And how do you claim on those coverages? Those are important questions that you need to have before you're in an automobile accident, because you can't purchase the coverage once you've had an auto accident and you're trying to claim. You can't just purchase a policy and be like, oh, I need it now. So you need this information that I'm providing to you. You need to know that you can purchase uninsured motorist coverage, and that it's also underinsured motorist coverage, and that Uber and Lyft drivers have it while they're driving someone for Uber and Lyft, and that if you're a passenger, you have it through Uber and Lyft, and that you can claim on it. And that it's also underinsured coverage, not just uninsured coverage, and how that works, and where to go if you need help. And that's when you seek the advice of a personal injury lawyer with extensive experience helping people with uninsured motorist bodily injury claims. We also help with medical payment coverage. We help with negotiating insurance bills. We help maximize the value of our services to our client. And that might mean waiving fees if necessary. If you come to my office and you've lost a family member and I help you obtain an insurance policy and that policy is only a state minimum policy, I'm probably going to forgive my fees and waive them. Maybe some costs I'll take for the processing, maybe obtaining the death certificate, records, traffic collision report. But if you only have a minimum policy, it's hard to tell a family, hey, I'm taking my 1/3 for the loss of your family member. So there's some risk that I take when I take on a client, because we don't know what the insurance policy is on the other side. But I do know during the initial consultation if my client has uninsured motorist coverage, because I ask my client, hey, do you have uninsured motorist coverage? Is there something here that we can fall back on in the event that the other party has a minimum insurance policy or no insurance policy at all? Is there something that we can fall back on if the other party has a minimum insurance policy or no insurance at all? That's what I asked during the initial consultation, to find out if there's a safety net for my client. Many times my clients don't know if they have uninsured motorist. When you buy insurance, the insurance company is supposed to have you sign an uninsured motorist waiver. Let me repeat that. When you purchase an insurance policy in the state of California, the insurance agent is supposed to have you sign a waiver if you don't purchase the uninsured motorist policy coverage. So if you're in purchasing insurance, be aware that if you're signing that waiver, you're not getting the coverage that you need to protect yourself in the event you're injured by a reckless driver without insurance. And I always encourage my clients to purchase more. I purchase a very large uninsured motorist policy because I realize the catastrophe that the roadways are. I've seen thousands of incidents, probably tens of thousands of incidents coming into my office. I've represented thousands of injury victims, and I have a large uninsured motorist policy because I'm concerned that I'll be hurt by someone who doesn't have insurance or has a state minimum policy, and I have a larger policy that will pay me more. But if I'm injured in an incident, I will probably have a lawyer to help me present my claim against the insurance company, because that's what lawyers do. They don't represent themselves. They have other people represent them, because lawyers know that they shouldn't be represented by themselves. Yeah, so a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. That's the joke. And what that means is you're a fool if you think you can represent yourself as a lawyer. Your client's a fool. The person who you're representing hired the wrong guy. The lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. But anyway, I digress. We're talking about uninsured motorist bodily injury policies, and I am providing this live stream and letting anyone ask questions about where to purchase this type of insurance. I can give you some names of some brokers, and you can purchase this type of insurance to protect your family. Although, I'm not an insurance salesman. My father's an insurance salesman. And I didn't think I would become so involved in insurance, but it just seems to me that you just can't avoid insurance in the United States. If you're a professional, you're dealing with insurance. If you're a doctor, you got to claim on insurance. If you're a lawyer, you got to get money from the insurance companies, right? So there are so many of us that rely on the automotive industry and these insurance policies, and I always encourage to get these policies if you can afford it. Okay. Well, I think I have a lot of content, but I think I should talk about one more topic, and then I got to go because I have work to do tonight. It's Friday night. Some people, they go out, but what I do is I take care of my family, and I have a wrongful death case that I'm working on. We're putting together a video. This is pre-litigation. There's been no lawsuit filed. Oh, message from a client. Got to take care of that too. Lawsuit's been filed, or it hasn't been filed, and that means that we're in the pre-litigation stage where there's no discovery by the defendant on my client. And I'm able to obtain information in investigation that's going to help us bring a strong claim against the insurance company. And this is a situation where the driver of the rideshare vehicle is at fault, and my clients are the children. Uh-oh, I turned that off. So I have a case where the rideshare driver is at fault, and the children are suing the rideshare company and their insurance for the wrongful death of their mother. And that's going to happen this fall. But right now we're in the preliminary investigation stage of the claim. I wouldn't call it necessarily the preliminary investigation stage. I've been doing interviews with witnesses. I've been researching the law. I've been obtaining photographs of necessary evidence from insiders that I have at the company. And this is the type of work that you get when you hire a serious automobile accident lawyer for a serious case. So if you've been injured in an automobile accident or you've lost a family member through the negligence of a rideshare driver, you need a lawyer who's going to go the extra mile because the evidence is in the hands of the defendant, of the person who killed your family member. So the claim that you're going to make is not going to be received well, and the evidence isn't just going to be turned over. You need an investigation, and you need to do it before you sue, because once you sue, you're exposed to discovery, and you might not be able to collect evidence as quickly or easily against the defendant. If you've been injured in an automobile collision and you have questions, give my office a call, and I'd be happy to answer them as part of a free consultation. All calls are confidential. There's no risk to you because there's no requirement to hire my office. It's a free and obligation-free consultation. Dial 866-NAPOLIN, and I'll see you tomorrow here for another discussion.